Well, the finalists continue, and in 1995, it was the Detroit Red Wings. And this was after the first lockout. So we have the lockout. 48 games played. Detroit, 33 wins, 11 losses, and 4 ties. And Detroit was kind of known as the team that can't. They got mocked a lot. They were the Detroit Dead Things. They hadn't won anything in forever. And there was a belief that Steve Yzerman might not be the guy to get it done. Fedorov was soft. They had a kind of an iffy defense, kind of an old defense. A lot of cast-off players that, really they're not going to make it. And this run helped them as a team, but didn't help that public perception. These were the playoffs that, and I've said this before, it felt like they wanted to get them done quickly. These series were all over fast. You look at the New Jersey side, and I just wanted to touch on this. They beat Boston in 5, Pittsburgh in 5, Philly in 6, and beat these guys in 4. So they lost 4 on their way to the Stanley Cup. Detroit only lost 6 in those playoffs. So, yeah, these teams were in a hurry. In the first round against Dallas, they win 4-3, 4-1, 5-1. So they were up 3-0. They lose game 4, 4-1, and they win game 5, 3-1. Against San Jose, this was a slaughter. I remember this series because I was a big San Jose fan. I'm like, yeah, San Jose's going to upset the Wings again. This is going to be great. No. 6-0, 6-2, 6-2, 6-2. Turns out that Detroit remembered what San Jose had done to them, and they were merciless about it. Chicago. This was a closer series than 4-1, but you know what? If you win all the overtime games, it really doesn't matter. 2-1 in overtime, 3-2, 4-3 in double overtime. They lost game 4, 5-2, so mathematically Chicago was still alive until game 5, went in double overtime again. Detroit wins 2-1. This is part of the reason why when I see a long overtime game, I'm like, oh, the team I don't want to see win's going to win. Because here, Detroit, and I was pulling for Chicago at that point. I hadn't really gotten angry at Chicago yet. That would happen the following year when when Chicago knocked out Vancouver, and it ticked me off how it happened. New Jersey in the finals, they get swept 2-1, 4-2, 5-2, 5-2. But we need to talk about something. We need to talk about how the trap works. This was the most boring Stanley Cup final I'd ever watched. And it left me cheering for Detroit to break through the trap. And it's weird because in 94, I'm pulling for Jersey against the Rangers because I really can't stand the Rangers. But by this point in the playoffs in 95, I'm like, oh, New Jersey plays this really hideously boring, really hard to watch hockey. I don't want to see them in the finals, and yet here we are. And then I wanted to see Detroit win because I didn't want this style to win because I knew if New Jersey wins, a lot of teams are like, hey, we could just stop all the action too. The shots in the finals, New Jersey leads in all 4 games, 28-17, 23-18, and I remember that game. That game was really hard to watch. That was just boring. 31-24 in game 3 and 26-16 in game 4. So in those finals, Detroit managed 75 shots over 4 games, had 7 goals. New Jersey had 108 shots over 4 games and had 16 goals. And it didn't help that Mike Vernon was not as good as the goalie at the other end of the ice. There's still comments on my Marty Brodeur video, and there's still New Jersey fans that are salty about my opinion about Brodeur. This is where my opinion about Brodeur started. When your goalie's facing less than 20 shots per game, it's hard to trumpet him as the greatest of all time. And this is one of those Stanley Cups. And then, it's just one of those things where when a goalie gets three Conn Smythe, or doesn't get 3 Conn Smythes, and I'm thinking of Patrick Roy here, as opposed to Brodeur, who never had a Conn Smythe trophy, because he didn't have to be fantastic. He just had to make the saves here and there, and just make sure that he kept things tidy because his team got a lot more shots than the other team, and that's the way it always worked. So that's where that perception comes from. Now, on the Detroit side of things, that final was a downer because that wiped out the previous 12 out of 14 games that they'd won. However, without this final and without the anger that Detroit played with in 95-96, I don't know if they win a Stanley Cup that year. I think this set things up. I think this forced some changes in the lineup that made the team better. There's a video already on the channel of 1996 Stanley Cup champion Detroit Red Wings, so I don't have to discuss that. But this was an interesting team. Fedorov led the way in scoring with 7 goals and 17 assists. Paul Coffey, 6 goals and 12 assists. It was kind of a renaissance for Coffey because he was kind of felt to be in the twilight of his career, and yet he played some of his best hockey as a defenseman in Detroit. He was more of a rover in Edmonton and Pittsburgh. Detroit, he started to become more of an all-around defenseman, and he was rewarded for it. Kozlov, 9 goals and 7 assists. Lidstrom, 4 goals and 12 assists. Brown, 4 goals and 8 assists. Yzerman, 4 goals and 8 assists. He only played 15 games. Cicerelli, 9 goals and 2 assists. Primo, 4 goals and 5 assists. Fetisov, 8 assists. Ray Shepard, who was one of my favorites, 4 goals and 3 assists. Bob Airy, a goal and 5 assists. Chris Draper, 4 goals and an assist. They got him for $1. And Darren McCarty, 3 goals and 2 assists. Vernon, 12 and 6 in the playoffs, 2.31 goals against, but the .889 save percentage kind of stings. It was a great run. They were a great team, but coming out of that final and coming out of that year, again, everybody said, can they win with Yzerman? Now, Scotty Bowman, coming out of this series, decided that getting rid of Dino Cicerelli was a really good idea, even though he led the team in goals. So Cicerelli was moved on to Tampa, and they'd win a Stanley Cup the following year. And it's interesting to look and see, which of these players are Hall of Famers. Fedorov, Coffey, Lidstrom, Yzerman. Cicerelli is a Hall of Famer. I didn't think he would be when he retired, just because he had kind of a reputation here and there, and he wasn't seen as a winner. Fetisov, Vernon should be in the Hall of Fame. He isn't, but he should be. He did make a number of runs in the playoffs, and he was a really solid goaltender for a very long time. But hey, let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And this was the 1995 Detroit Red Wings.